Hello and welcome back to episode 9 of Here to Edify. Before we get started, as always, I want to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen. Specifically, if you are listening on YouTube right now, pause before you go any further. Hit that subscribe button. I need to get my subscribers up. Help me. Also, if you are listening on Apple Music, hit that 5-star rating. And of course, if you enjoy it, share it. I want others to be able to feel all of the goodness that I'm hoping you feel as well. And lastly, comment. Please say something. I am here to listen, and more importantly, I am here to respond. Now, let's hop into today's episode. Last week, Dom and Rebecca told us about their struggles on the road to adoption, what the talk looks like in their household, how they're instilling the identity of Christ in their children above all else. And lastly, we ended on the question of how they are preparing their children for a world that will receive them different from how they received their parents. That is where we left off, and that is where we are picking up today. This is part 2 of The Gospel is a Story of Adoption.
Here to edify.
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 So in a lot of ways, I've been thrown on the ground by the police. I've been pulled over in Louisville, Kentucky, 3 specific times for 0 reasons, just on the charge of you look suspicious, or I need to make sure everyone is where they're supposed to be. And I'm in J-Town on the way to do, to do a mercy visit for a person who was just in the hospital in their neighborhood. And I have that relation. I have those experiences, right? And growing up, where we did in Houston, and very complicated relationship in a lot of ways with police. Like we love police, like we do, like we respect authority. We are very much, we honor the military. We have family that have served in the military in many different ways. And so we respect those things. Absolutely. Also, like we want to be aware that these realities that are in front of us are just that, they're realities.
Yeah.
I've heard it said so many times this year, is like, it seems like that it's happening more and more. There are more situations that are happening. And really, is that true? Or is it there's just more cameras that are capturing it? So how much do we don't know, right? Like how much happens that we don't know about? So that's really the posture that we want to take that I just mentioned, that dictate certain priorities and foundations in our home. And some of these foundations are really the image of God. We want our children to be rooted and grounded in the reality that they are made in the image of God.
Yes.
And that is so fundamental to really, if you can understand that, we can really understand a lot. And they'll have a firm foundation for any situation, really. The fact that, the new humanity, the new family of God looks like our family. It looks like our family. But then really, like, what do we want to equip them with is character. We want them to know that character is so important. Man looks on the outside. Man will make a judgment call on the outside. God looks at the heart, though. So character is so important. Virtue is important. We want our children to be very virtuous. We want them to be knowledgeable, because what's a way to, I've always tried to handle my business like this as a minority in America. I value education. I value knowledge. I value hard work. I'm not going to be outworked. Like in some way I can hang in any conversation, and I've worked hard to do that. I've never wanted to earn anything based on skin color. I've never wanted to be given any breaks based on, and I know I'm tapping into a lot there, but I'm just saying, like, knowledge is very important. Entrepreneurship. I very much recognize that in our country, there is a gap in wealth. There's a gap in ownership. There's going to be all sorts of debates to, like, what drives that gap. And what's led to that gap is there are many sociocultural, historical realities that speak into that. But I at least need to be aware of it.
Mhm.
And however we may, if we part ways on how that's happened, doesn't matter to me as much as just to recognize it. So to me, entrepreneurship is a way to sort of like, yeah, you need to be making your own money, earning your own money, working hard, building wealth. We want our kids to be able to have those skills to build their own wealth, because that's important. Doing things with excellence is important. Like we believe in, Black excellence. Like we use that term with our kids, very much so, and we celebrate it. We really often put like many examples of Black excellence in front of them, so that they see, like they can see themselves in that story. They can see themselves in their skin color doing that great thing. Um, One thing I want to do, I probably didn't mention, but I want to, is this, some of this is just parenting 101. But then you throw in the dynamic of raising, Ethiopian Black children. I've never seen myself as raising a boy or a girl. I've always seen ourselves as raising a man and a woman. But I want to be very clear. I've taken the lead in really helping us understand that what we're really, we want to raise, like we want to raise a Black king. We want to raise a Black queen. And we're not afraid to use those terms with him. And some may say, oh, well, that's prideful. Like, it's what? Like, we're trying to build, we're wanting to make sure that they have a firm foundation in who they are. They have a firm comfortability in their own skin, so they can go out and really face the challenges in the world. That's sort of like part one. Part two is just going to be very brief, in the sense that what we really are preparing our children for is really just how to live the Christian life in postmodern America. And that's so fundamental. We can't miss that, but that's really the key. So issues of like the talk, have we had the talk with our kids? There's been no way to not have that talk.
Right.
Those issues are in front of us every day. And I've heard some people critique, like, well, to raise children with that kind of fear of police and that kind of fear, that's making a lot of assumptions on what that talk is and what our conversation is like. But what we've had to say is just like I don't particularly get excited when Levi's walking around the neighborhood in a hoodie and where we live. I don't particularly like when our kids leave the house and they're not like in their best. They're not looking presentable, like looking, and that, that's a lot of burden to put on a kid. So we try to just prepare them for that conversation. We've had to talk with them. We've had others talk about, those things with them, and it's very important. Now, they're child appropriate. You want to make those things age appropriate for sure. I mean, maybe this will, I don't know how, what kind of reaction this will get from listeners maybe, but like, my son has always talked about he wants to be a police officer.
Right.
And well, I'll celebrate that, and we want him to be the most virtuous, godly, just police officer, or, FBI agent, or whatever he may want to be, who knows? And Sophia's got a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. So be the most just, equitable, fair entrepreneur. Like, we want that for our children, because you know what? They're going to get judged on sight really two ways. One, just living as a minority in America. And actually, this is the part I think that, like, how lit do you want this podcast to be? This second part is there's a lot, and why we take the posture we do, because we know they're going to be judged by people who look like them as well. And, growing up with non-Black parents has already come up for them in school, and it's already been a thing. And I really remember in the beginning when I said I wasn't exactly like signing up to adopt Black children. It's just really this reality that it's not only tough in just your general world, but even just being judged by your own community. Like we see that a lot, you know, and that's challenging. That's really hard. And we embrace our decision. We embrace like the challenge ahead, but we know that our children are going to face risk too, which is why we're so fundamentally firm on, we want to make sure they are firm and secure in Christ, because they're going to face some tough waters ahead on multiple different levels.
Yeah, no, I 100% appreciate that, because I can definitely understand that, you know, like the whole how black are you, you know, type thing. And so I think, again, to acknowledge that, to know that, is better than to pretend it's not there, that there is judgment from both sides. And so in light of that, what are, like, have you seen Levi and Sophia struggle with them having a multicultural family? What has that experience been like?
Yeah, there are several stories, and I actually talked with them and asked if I could share these stories, and they're both willing. And Sophia actually shared even more stories. You could share this too. Remember when this happened? And so I'm just grateful that she is at a point of feeling comfortable, of sharing times when she felt particularly vulnerable. So one situation was Halloween. It was like, I don't know, maybe second or third grade. And we went over to this street that was close to their school and just decided we were going to, trick or treat over there. And there was a Black family that was walking toward us. And she panicked. She said, "Mom, we have to go. We have to go right now. We need to leave right now." And so she grabbed my hand and pulled me across the street to the other side. And I said, "Baby, what is going on?" And I actually had been watching This Is Us. and so I was like, man, she's not going to say it. I have to say it. And I said, "Baby, are you sometimes embarrassed that I'm white?" And she just burst into tears and she said, "Mama, I love you. I love you. I love Daddy." And she's like, "It's just that Charlie's mommy and daddy are white." She starts listing off all of her friends at school who Charlie's mommy and daddy are Black. And she just basically said, "I'm different. I don't have Black parents. I can't relate with my friends at school on everything." And I said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That has to be really hard." And I think what I realized from that conversation is I always have to communicate to both of them that it is okay to talk to me about anything without them feeling like what they say can break me. I've told them ever since they were teeny tiny, and they said, I'm thinking about my birth mom, And I said, so I would ask them lots of questions. It wasn't like, "Oh, okay, what are you thinking about?" It was, "I want to know what you're thinking about." And when they were teeny tiny, I remember putting them to bed, and I said, "I want you to know that God has made your heart big enough to love your birth mama and love me too. There's enough room in there. The Lord has given you enough space in your heart to love us both. You can talk about her anytime you want. You can talk about what you're thinking, like any questions or fears you might have. You can always talk to me." And so I think the Lord has called us to be their parents, and I think the Lord has also given us grace to, He's given us grace to be able to bear that. And then also a year ago, this, Astrid, because I called you asking for your help, but a year ago, Sophie was really struggling at school and was getting into trouble, and it just was not, it wasn't like her. And I knew that for me, I knew that she needed to be around Black women, Black godly women, and be reminded that the gospel is not a white gospel, that the gospel is for all people, and the gospel is for her. And I just asked you to take her shopping. And So, yeah, you and Shania, Lativia, who are all sisters that we love so much, who have been in our Christian community. Yeah, y'all took her out and got her some great stuff and went out to eat with her. And she just got to experience that. And I was so thankful. I'm more reserved and shy, and Sophia is extremely gregarious and like, show me the people. I need to be with the people. And it's good that she has a daddy who's like that too. We talk about how they're similar often. But I also asked India to mentor her, especially during this time when she was struggling, because and India is a Black woman. Yeah, I knew that I had reached a limit, and now it took the community, and really the body of Christ it's shaped like that. That's how the Lord intended it. Like if the Lord made various parts of the body to help us to grow in our faith, then why would I limit myself to myself in raising my child? I need to make sure that I'm open to all of the resources the Lord has given me. And my goodness, haven't we been blessed, babe, by Christians, Black Christians in our community who have been all in. And Charlotte, I want to mention her too. Oh my goodness.
Can you shout out to everybody?
I do want, oh my goodness, yeah. My friend Lakeisha, who helped me initially in taking care of Sophia's hair, and many women, actually. Sophia's at Shania is getting her hair done because I have limits to my ability, and just recognizing that. So yeah, there's just a need there, and the Lord ended up, through that situation last year, the Lord ended up saving Sophia, just days after going shopping with you. And I'm grateful for that. Levi has experienced being made fun of too, for having a white mom, and it actually was from a boy at school who has a white mom.
He's a biracial kid on the basketball team, and like Levi he had the blues, you know what I'm saying? Like, somebody making fun of me all the time about making him a white mom. And go to the basketball game, I'm like, hey, show me who that kid is. I always want to know who he is. So he comes in, it's like, oh, that's him. I'm like, so I didn't even think that was I didn't know that was his mom, right? So then she's cheering for him the whole time, and then after the game, gives him a big hug, and I'm like, that's his mom. Like, she's white. So how's he gonna make fun of me? But anyway, I think like when you talk about what struggles the children have had, I just think quickly it's important to note that we as parents have had struggles, not with loving our kids or anything like that, but just in terms of how we present to the world around us, and the judgments. Living in Kentucky, right? Living in Louisville, Kentucky, one of the most segregated cities we've ever lived in, or the most, that we've ever lived in. That's a context, right? And so there's judgments on all sides. And so I think just being willing to know that you're not going to get everything right, but then at the same time, like, we know that, but then we have a fear of man as well at times, and so that's been a struggle, to walk with, like, we're walking into an all-white space, we're walking into majority Black space. Like, what's everybody thinking? And I just think the more that we can just, again, we ourselves can rely on our identities in Christ, then that'll really help. But we don't want our children. This is really where building confidence in them is so important, because we don't want them to be racialized or experience discrimination or anything like that. But at the same time, we don't want them walking around with a sense of, like, insecurity because of their skin color. We want them to walk around, like, very confident in who they are. So those struggles, I think parents have the struggles too, so I just wanted to highlight that as well.
No, definitely. I'm just really thankful as I'm listening to you guys mentioning stuff like acknowledging that there is judgment from both sides. I think that is, like, super important. Rebecca, listening to you acknowledge that, hey, I want you to know that this is not um, the gospel is not a white gospel. It is the gospel, period. I think these are things that, for me, they do so much to hear you all acknowledging this. And I know it is by the grace of God, because I look at them and I'm just like, they're blessed to have parents that acknowledge this. And again, my expectation is not that any parent does things perfectly, but I think that it is a grace to even hear you all give voice to the things that, as a Black woman, the baseline things that I often find myself fighting for non-Black people to hear and accept. Even you saying, Sophia's not going to say this, and so I'm going to say this. Like that is huge, because if not, that could have definitely fed into, I have to carry something that it's like, no, this is not for you to carry. So I am just super blessed as I'm sitting here and hearing you all mention things that, yeah, they may be uncomfortable, but so what? They're real. We don't get anywhere, again, by pushing it to the side and ignoring. We've been talking about specifically Black children, but as I said to you all, I believe this is like before this even started, the importance of parents that adopt anyone outside of their ethnicity. This ethnicity that you were born into is important. And so what would you say to the person or the couple that is like, hey, I'm considering adoption, and I'm considering adopting children that are of a different culture than my own? How would you encourage them to celebrate that culture?
Yeah, no, that's so good to think about that. I'll answer that question in two parts. One, just if you're considering adopting in general, I would just encourage you to really get some people around you that can ask you some questions just to validate like your calling to adopt. I do think like we're all in a general sense cared to love um, and care for orphans, I think in a general sense. But then even like specifically, I don't believe that means that everyone's required to adopt. And I think some people can go into adoption with really setting themselves up for disappointment because they're looking for that adoption that adopted child to fill a void they have, or to bring them some kind of meaning they're not experiencing, or give them some type of, so I just think there can be some real mixed motivations that will lead to some disappointment. And so I would just say, like, yeah, make sure you feel specifically called to adopt. Yeah, many different dynamics, like, and not as a plan B, like, well, this didn't work, or I mean, we know plenty of couples who adopted first and then they have biological children later. That's what I would just encourage you, that make sure that get some people around you who can speak into your life that would be able to affirm that calling and desire. Secondly, and in regards to adopting, multicultural, multi-ethnic, what I would say to that is, just remember, like, you're not adopting for you. You're adopting, like, be really other centered. And so you are, stepping into somebody's world. Like, if you adopt internationally, that's a thing. You're stepping into the host country, and there may be a certain attitude towards Americans flying over, or Italians, or wherever, in adopting from that host country. That's a stigma. There's a view there of the host country. So be very respectful, even when you get off the plane. Be very respectful of that. So be really other centered. Have a lot of empathy that they're going to grow up in that multicultural home, that multi-ethnic home, and that's a certain set of considerations that you need to make, and then just really, like, with be humble enough to ask questions of people, maybe from that ethnicity, from that culture, so you can learn as much as possible. Again, just a posture of humility. And I would just say, be authentic in those efforts. There's a way to do it that's like, there's a way to honor the culture that's kind of like, that kind of can come across as real appropriated and just really, really just odd. So just be authentic, and just be authentic in that approach. And really, like, the key is what you're really teaching, just with the dynamic of adoption, is you're showing respect to the culture. So respect where they're coming from. But really what you're doing, that I would challenge people to consider, is that you're just respecting their birth mother, and you don't know all the factors that went into that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so respecting their culture is another way to respect their birth mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way to celebrate, like, there are many different factors there, but I just think it's a way to build love and respect and admiration for, that birth mother that comes from a culture that, that is a certain ethnicity and is going to have a certain heritage. You may not be able to speak to all those issues, and you shouldn't make up any facts or make up any stories that you're not 100% firm
Right.
on. But it's just a way to build love and respect and admiration and just celebrate who they are, in totality, right? And as a whole person. And so that's what I would say. Just, I don't think that was brief. I was about to say briefly, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, I want to say too, like, we also chose Ethiopia because we knew there were Ethiopian connections in our body of believers at that time. Also, there were several families who had adopted from Ethiopia, and we have really encouraged them to learn Amharic, and which is the
They're
language
not
there.
really into it though.
Yeah, so
We don't know why. Like I just even asked Levi today. I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is just.
well, yeah, we had talked about this. He was going to.
I don't know. They're not really into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. Like there may be something there that maybe just the work put into it. They've had to learn, Mandarin in their school and things like that. But when it comes to Amharic, it's just been a little bit like, oh, I don't know. I don't really, and we don't know why. I mean, maybe nothing, maybe something there. So we're just keeping our eye on that.
Yeah. And we're not forcing them to, because for me as a mama, I'm like, well, it could, like, delving into Ethiopian culture right now, maybe developmentally, just feels like too much. Like, there might be really sore spots. And if we're pushing them and forcing them to learn all things Ethiopian, it might force them to have to address those sore spots too soon. And so we're encouraging it, but yeah, I mean,
it's important. Like, so as their father, it's very important to me that they learn Amharic, because as a Hispanic man growing up in the U.S., like my mom, she made a decision to not teach us Spanish in the home for a number of different reasons. So I've been playing catch up with Spanish every year of my life and getting judged by the Latino community for not being as fluent as I need to be, or they think I need to be, whatever. And I just know that's potentially like a reality they'll face too. We want to take them back to Ethiopia to visit. They want to go back to visit, and we just are preparing for that as well. So for me, culturally speaking, it's very important that they learn it. But again, not going to force it on them. One thing we teach them about Ethiopia, and for me, it's significant. Ethiopia has never been occupied, and the Italians, tried once and were, booted out. And for me, that's significant because that's not the history of Africa, right? It's never been colonized, and we find that significant and want to call that out because Ethiopians are strong. And I'm not saying other people are weak, but just those dynamics of colonization and occupation are real, and they're there. But we want them to know the history of their country too, that your country was never colonized. It was never occupied by foreign, interest. And Italians tried it once, they got booted out, and you should feel like strong, and you should feel like proud of that, And so anyway, that's just a little tidbit, but we do try to share that with them, and how Ethiopia is so involved in the Bible, and like where we see it in the Bible. And yeah,
that's really sweet. Like, as I'm reading something, I'll pull them over. Hey, let's look. Cush is mentioned here, and that's Ethiopia,
Queen of Sheba,
the Queen of Sheba. Yeah.
Ethiopian eunuch.
So, oh yeah, the Ethiopian eunuch. That's just a beautiful story. Like, they can see Ethiopia in ancient literature. It's amazing.
And,
Your culture goes back so far into the ancient world. That's awesome.
And just the story of the story of redemptive history is global.
Mm-hmm.
God has a global history. It's not just American. It's not white. Like it's global. And so just keeping that in front of them too is really important. So that just related to what parents who are considering adopting multi-ethnically, multiculturally should, I think, just have on your radar and really take intentional steps to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that is great and exciting. And yeah, sometimes it takes a minute and they get a little older and it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting, So, and lastly, one of the new things that I've been, that I'm going to be incorporating is, what are your words to lift by? And essentially that just means, in the midst of just life, yes, we could say 2020, but it'll be 2021 and there will still be things. What is something that keeps you lifted and kind of grounded in the midst of it all?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think Jesus is better than 2020, and Jesus is more. This isn't our home.
Mm-hmm.
This pandemic's not our future. Jesus is more. He's so much better. And to lose sight of the Savior is really just to lose sight of hope. And so, yeah, that's from a bunch of different passages. But I think, like, really just, from Philippians, that to not be anxious for anything is for 2020 as well. And there's so many things to be anxious about, but to be anxious for nothing. But what about the pandemic? What about this election? What about Breonna Taylor? What about Ahmaud Arbery? What about many different, George Floyd, many other different issues? Be anxious for nothing, but by everything, prayer and supplication. And the peace of God will guard your heart. It's the peace of God that goes to work to guard your heart in Christ Jesus. What an image, what a reality, that it's God's very peace that's guarding our heart in Christ. So it's firm. It is firm, and that hope is real. That peace is real, and it's for this year too. It's for this year too, and beyond. But yeah.
There are two things really that, especially this year, I've been clinging to. One is from the Psalms, and it says, it's a prayer to the Lord. It says, satisfy me in the morning with your unfailing love, that I may sing for joy and be glad all my days. That really, a satisfaction in the Lord is what allows you to have joy, even in the midst of all of this craziness. And there's also a music artist named Sarah Groves, and she has a song called This Cup, and it's making reference to when Jesus was in Gethsemane, and he says, if this cup can pass from me, take it, but not my will but yours be done. And of course that cup remained. And so the chorus of the song says, this cup, I want to drink it up, to be right here in the middle of it. Right here. This challenging reality is better than fear or fantasy. So for me personally, I am often one that is either very afraid by my circumstances, or I'm thinking about the grass being greener on the other side. I'm looking at Zillow, at all the houses and all the cities and if only I can get there, then I can be away from what's happening right now. Or, watching several episodes of whatever, like trying to get away from my reality. But this is my cup. And 2020 is my cup. 2020 with our family looking the way it is
Mm.
That's my cup, and I want to drink it up. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for sitting down with me. Thank you for your vulnerability. Yeah, I just really appreciate you guys for taking the time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Here to Edify. New episodes drop every Wednesday and can be found wherever you listen, now also on YouTube. Thanks again, and hope to catch you listening next time.